Hello, you guys, and welcome back to Ambitious. If you are watching this, you're going to see that I have basically bundled up. It is, if you know me, you've been watching probably my socials, my quote unquote studio or where I film this is in my house, and my house is freezing. So I was like, I gotta bundle up with blankets today. We're gonna get cozy for this one and get bundled up because today's episode, I really wasn't I was inspired by questions that I've received recently. And one of the questions that I often get, and this is not even just about a specific number, but more a matter of the question of like, who do I need to become to hit the kind of business goals or milestones that I want to achieve? And I've had this from people who are in 9 to 5s wanting to create an online business. I've had this from people who have online businesses who want to scale those businesses. And often the question is like, well, just like, how do I tap into that next level? How do I become who I need to be to have the business that I want to have? And you guys have heard me, if you've listened to Ambitious for any period of time, you've heard me tell the stories about, my coach who came to me and said, you don't deserve 7 figures because you're not embodying that of a 7 figure earner. So like it doesn't just happen. You have to have the habits and the embodiment of the mindset and all of the pieces. And you've also heard me talk about, quotes from one of my most recent mentors that, he had shared a quote that he learned from someone else, which was that you don't have the business you want because you haven't become the person to run it yet. And so we see these notes and these awarenesses in all different aspects, right? We're constantly getting this note and awareness of we need to become somebody different to have a different business. But then the question becomes, well, how do I become that person? And also like what do I need to learn? What do I need to embody to tap into that? And so today I want to share a list of I was really kind of going back through my journey, and a most recent question that I get with a lot of scaling entrepreneurs is how do I hit 7 figures? What do I need to do to become the person to have the 7 figure business? Like, how do I need to act? What do I need to think? And there's a lot of different aspects to this. Like, there's mindsets around, how you operate your day. There's mindsets around how you operate the business. There's mindsets around how you operate with your circle and who you choose to spend your time with. Like, I genuinely think answering that question for me could be like a full day seminar because there really are so many lenses and buckets of change that I've executed that have allowed me to be in this place. But I thought, okay, well, how do I wrap this with a bow in an hour? And so what I decided to do is I kind of pulled a lot of the different perspectives or thought processes that I have that I attribute to be the reason my business was successful. So these are really going to fall quite a bit within the business bucket today, but we may definitely come back with another kind of addition to this series in the more personal buckets if that's something that would be supportive for you. So if you feel like that's something that you'd benefit from, always love to hear from you guys in the DM so I can really tailor what we're talking about and also like kind of what topics we dive deeper into based off of what's coming up for you and what you're experiencing. So, hitting 7 figures broke my identity because it made me realize that like I had ways of just perspective that changed the pathways I saw in front of me to the problems I was experiencing. And so I think there's kind of this misconception, right, in business that people who have 7 figure or multiple 7 figure businesses just have this like blueprint that other people don't have access to. And while, yes, of course, like even with the clients that I work with, are we making changes to their business? No question we're making changes to their business. But I think in connection to that, there's also the aspect of the problems they experience are still similar to the problems you might be experiencing. Like, I still always need to be like, where's more leads? Where's more sales? Just like you do. I'm somebody who's like, how do we get the marketing to do better and to make it hit home with people more? Just like you do. I have clients that have said, hey, like, I don't know if I can make my payment this month, just like you do. Like, we experience the same situations, we experience the same quote unquote problems. And the thing that I think is the misconception around hitting 7 figures is that hitting 7 figures is the removal of problems. The problems still persist. The problems are still there. The only thing that really changes is your perspective and how you perceive those problems. And most importantly, with that perception change is also the different pathways you see to solving them. And so today I'm going to go through some different perspectives that I have in the way that I look at my business, the way that I also, challenge my clients who are wanting to hit 7 and multiple 7 figures to look at their business. This is something that are kind of like my commandments, if you will, of how I've really found success in the business bucket with growing and hitting new milestones after milestone. So one of the commandments or one of the kind of like beliefs, and when I say commandments, by the way, these are just, I really embody them that way. Like I think about these as a way of operating, a way of living in this bucket. And so because of that, I try to fall like in connection to these values as much as I possibly can. So the first one being, and if you are a current client or if you've ever been a client in one of my programs, you will laugh because it's something that's numero uno for me. Always be selling. Always be selling. Like people will say, like, can I sell too much? Should I sell this and then sell that? Like maybe that's too overwhelming for my audience. And I want to unpack this one because it's probably not what you think. Always be selling really means always embodying the problem that you solve for people. Because for me, selling is not a matter of taking, it's not a matter of payments, it's not a matter of any of that. Selling means be so lit up about what you do and how you do it and what that's going to do for someone who experiences it that you just cannot, you're busting at the seams, you're talking about it so much. Like, I am obsessed with what I do. I am obsessed with what I do. So when I say always be selling, I'm getting a massage. And for some reason, it somehow works its way into the conversation of what I do. And someone's like, yeah, like I really want to leave this job, but I just don't know what to do. And like, I see people who are like living on, yachts and all of these things. And like, I just were like, what's the first step to that? And I'm like, well, like it really all just starts with putting yourself out there. And I would just give some genuine value. And what comes up as the next conversation? How do you know that? We're like, oh my God, that really is helpful. Like, where did you learn that? Right? We prompt the conversation. Like, listen, the thing I want to clarify is I'm not intentionally trying to sell. It's not about selling. It's about service and it's about sharing your insights and your wisdom. And so I share my insights and wisdom everywhere I go. I'm getting a massage. I'm sharing it. I'm in the back of an Uber. I'm sharing it. The amount of contact information I have gotten just from being in Ubers and being in, for example, like, what is that called? Uber Black or Uber Premium. And I'm talking to the driver and they're like, yeah, like we're trying to expand this business. I'm like, yeah, give me a call. Like, I'm happy to chat about how I can help you. Like, I am always selling. But the thing when I say always be selling is not a matter of always be transactioning, always be pitching. It has nothing to do with that. Always be selling as a mindset that I talk about. And the reason that, my clients laugh at this is the fact that like always be selling to me means and represents always be so obsessed with your product, so obsessed with your process, your program, your approach, your service that you are busting at the seams wanting to tell everybody about it because you know what it can do for the person who experiences it. That's what it means to always be selling. And so for me, when I try to think about, how do I always have these opportunities? I'm always talking about what I do and how it helps people and also how it can help the person I'm speaking with, that I naturally create opportunities for sales, even though the intention was never to transact or collect a payment. It was just genuinely to serve. So one of the things I see as a disconnect with people who want to hit seven figures is they have this like shame around talking about what they do. They have a shame around, speaking about their service or speaking about their offer or their program. And what I find is that the people who are successful, they speak about it all day, every day, because they don't feel shame around what they do. They don't feel shame around how they help people. They embody it at the deepest level and they feel it to their core in every sense of the being. So I want to start with number one, which is always be selling. This is a motto that I have. And I ask myself, how can I deeper connect to what it is that I do and share more of that with the world is really how I kind of look to ask myself, how can I always be selling? Means how can I always be serving and embodying so much of what I do that I share it with the world? Second is the fact that problems are a sign of progress. Okay. So problems are your sign of progress. It's interesting, I remember being on a call when I was growing my business and in a mastermind group that I was part of. And I said, hey guys, I've been kind of navigating the situation because I'm experiencing more failed payments right now. And I remember someone on the call basically saying, oh, well, I don't have any failed payments. Like I don't have anybody who's not having payments come through. Every single payment has come through. I've never experienced that. And I felt a lot of shame around it originally because I was like, oh my gosh, like do other businesses not have failed payments? Like, is this a Kate problem? And I remember my mentor at the time called that person out on the call and said, hey, Sarah, to be honest, that shouldn't be a badge of honor that you don't have or a badge of pride that you don't have failed payments. Because if you don't have failed payments, it means you don't have a lot of payments happening. Because when people have a lot of payments happening, they have a percentage of those people that are paying that sometimes their credit card is expired, they can't process the payment, they need an adjustment on their payment plan, whatever it may be. But his reframe immensely helped me, which was the idea that, like, if you're seeing the absence of problems, you're probably seeing as well an absence of progress. Because when you progress in your business and you hit new stages and you hit new levels, that comes with problems. You're being stretched, right? Like, you're going to the next stage. So when you're going to the next stage, you might have a difficulty with, why are these people not closing? Or why am I experiencing failed payments? Or, I feel like I'm having trouble with my team members, or I feel like my systems are not supporting me. The thing that I've realized is, like, my relationship with problems has really greatly changed in our business. Like, when we see problems happen, I'm excited. Like, and that sounds weird, but I'm excited to see problems, because when I see problems, that tells me it is a core indicator that as a business owner, you're making progress. If previously you had no issues, you're like, oh, leads are coming in, this is great. Great. Well, if you want to double your business, what does that do? It creates a problem of we need double the leads. If you're somebody who, for example, has sales rolling in, and again, you've got great inquiries and things, yes, if you're comfortable, you're not going to have any problems. But guess what? If you want to triple your business, overnight you go, hey guys, we got a sales problem. How are we going to hit the new goal? Right? So when we think about problems, a lot of people think problems are the sign that something's wrong in the business. I look at problems as an indication of, hey, we're making progress here. We're being stretched to the next level. So this is a sign that basically we have outgrown what we're currently doing. And so for me, problems are a sign of progress. I get excited when I see them. And I also realize that when I have a problem, it means I get to develop a new process. Like, it's interesting when someone comes to me and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm having failed payments. The reason I bring up failed payments, by the way, is it's something that a lot of people feel a lot of shame around. So I want to normalize that, there's a percentage of all businesses that will have people default on payment or struggle with payment, which is why I wanted to accentuate this one specifically, because it's not talked about a lot. When we have problems, we also develop processes for those problems. And so the thing that I think is interesting is when someone doesn't welcome problems, they're also not welcoming the development of new processes in their business. They're also not welcoming the fact that there's going to be a change and an evolution to how they once did things. So back to the failed payments example, if you never have failed payments, you've never been forced to create a failed payment process, right? So the way we develop the processes for the next stage of where we're going is through the experience of problems. So the thing that I really, to be honest, do a lot as a mentor and as a coach for people is to say, hey, I had that problem. I built a process. Here's my process. Like, I had the problem of not having enough leads. I had the problem of, people weren't closing even though they were inquiring. I've had the problem of, people are landing on my website, but they're not inquiring or moving through the pipeline. Like, I've had all that. And so because of that, I have a process on how I go through auditing it, analyzing it, and executing on what I realize has come up. Like, problems are exciting. It means that you're progressing. So instead of us being like, oh, another problem, it's a matter of saying, okay, well, if the problem is happening over and over and over again, then, for me, I also have this other quote that I say a lot, which is, one of our core statements of our business, which if it's a pattern, it's a problem. So I think there's different types of problems. There's symptoms that come up in the sense of situations that come up that are helpful and are something that really help to develop the business and mean that you're going to the next level. But you've also got problems that are a pattern. Problems that are a pattern are of a different category. It means that there's something that are happening ongoing all over and over and over and over. If you're having a problem and you create a process for it, but then even after you make the process, the pattern continue, that's something that I say, okay, like, this is actually a problem you want to dive deeper into, because it means it's not truly being solved by the process we created. Okay. Another one of my perspectives is that 70% is good enough. And the amount of entrepreneurs that I talk to who are all about, like, I believe that hitting 7 figures is a matter of excellence. It's a matter of perfection. Like, they kind of leave no stone unturned. There's nothing that's not perfectly attended to or mastered. The thing I will tell you of all the people that I have helped hit 7 figures and also surpassed into multiple 7 is that they don't feel that they need all the information to take action. They don't need 100% of the information to move. They need like 60, 70% of it. They don't need something that they design or create to be 100% perfect. They need it 70% of the way there, and they're going to launch it and refine along the way. And the thing that I think we need to acknowledge is that oftentimes when we're trying to create something to be 100% perfect, 100% curated, 100% developed. What really we're talking about is we're trying to protect ourselves from judgment. We're trying to protect ourselves. Like perfectionism to me is really just the aspect of people deeply, deeply, deeply wanting to protect themselves from judgment and criticism. And sometimes, and most of the time, it's something that's not actually a reality that they will experience. It's the belief that it could or might occur. Like when someone puts out, for example, a freebie and they're like really refining the design of this by changing the title or the subheading or whatever it might be. And I'm like, hey, you doing this has stalled it going out. And so my belief around the 70% is good enough is when people fall into perfection, what they actually are doing is procrastinating. And so when you're procrastinating, what I tell people is, and I ask them this question when I feel like I see a client or a peer that's falling into this bucket, I say, hey, if you are doing this and you want it to be perfect, my question to you is, would you rather it be perfect and have that, gold stamp that I did every single piece and I uncovered everything and it not go out and create any results? Or would you rather it be 70% of the way there, get it out quicker, get results, and refine along the way? Do you believe that making it perfect is more effective and more impactful than it going out and making progress? Do you believe that whatever you're focused on, the thing that you're working on, the thing that you're ruminating on, planning and conceptualizing and making it perfect, is that more important in your opinion than the progress it could make if it was out now? And that's a hard question for people to answer because they usually recognize that it isn't really a conscious thing, the refinement they're doing. It's not a conscious thing that they are, trying to make it perfect and change and edit all the time. Like it's not conscious what they're doing, but they don't really recognize the domino effect and the impact that it's creating, which is that every single day that you make it perfect, you are procrastinating. And by procrastinating, you're actually saying that making it perfect is more important than my goal. Making it perfect or seeing it look like X is more important to me than getting the outcome. And when you have to verbalize that and say that to somebody, it makes you really rethink your goals and how you're approaching things. So 70% of the information is good enough. You don't need it like 100% of the way designed. You don't need 100% of the information before you can move. You don't need anything to be 100% before you act. You really need to get something 70% of the way there. I see this a lot of the time as a trend with offer creation. I see so many people when they are creating offerings in their business that they're like perfect videos and perfect worksheets and perfect onboarding and offboarding. That is something that while you're taking 6 months to make perfect, so and so, who actually has gotten over the idea of perfectionism and having it 100% perfect, has launched the offer 5 months before you did because they weren't worried about making it perfect and they recognized that they could refine along the way. And so then people ask themselves, why are 7-figure business owners successful? That's because they just got a 5-month head start on you, simply based off the fact that they're not invested in it being perfect. They're invested in progress. And so 70% is good enough is a motto that helps you to really realize, do I have 70% of the way there? Do I have 70% of the information? Because if I do, then the next step is go take action, go launch it, go release it, go say and press okay. Because every day that you focus on making it perfect is really just you focusing on procrastinating, getting the outcome and the progress that you want. The next one is that you're the lid of your business. This was taught to me by a past mentor, and he had shared with me, I believe this is a quote by Dean Jackson. I'm pretty sure. I have to triple check. I may be entirely wrong. There's a bunch of different people in my mind who have all these amazing quotes. But you are the lid of your business is really to say that your business will never surpass the level of development, awareness, and understanding and education that you have. And it's important for us to realize that, like, and even why we're having this conversation, right, about being a 7-figure earner, so many people want their business to hit certain levels, but you're not even at that level. You haven't mastered the mindset. You haven't mastered the emotional resiliency to hit that. And, emotional reaction and regulation is probably one of the biggest caps for a lot of business owners. Their sales aren't going the way they want and they start freaking out. They, feel like the marketing isn't going the way they want and they start freaking out. They have anything really happen as a problem in their business and they start freaking out. And then they're like, I just don't understand why my business isn't growing. Well, that's because you're having a completely dysregulated state happening for 2 days after you have a problem. Seven-figure business owners have a moment, they honor the emotion. So like they have intentional times as well built into their day where they release those emotions, but they don't get caught up in the drama. They don't get caught up in the emotion. They realize that okay, like if I'm going to keep things moving, I got to make sure that I'm able to process and regulate at a very quick rate. Same thing when it comes to, you're the lid of your business. Your level of knowledge, right? Like if you are feeling like, oh, like I'm seeing results happen right now and I'm seeing great things happen in my business, maybe your business is not up in flames right now. Maybe it's not something that has massive problems, and that's good. I don't want you to always be in a state of panic in your business. But if your business is staying stuck at where it is, for example, let's just say marketing, it could be because you genuinely don't know and haven't tapped into the depth of marketing strategy you need to go to the next level. Like your marketing will never exceed your level of knowledge of marketing. Your sales will never exceed your level of understanding of sales in your business. Your brand will never exceed your level of understanding of brand strategy in your business. This is why we talk about coaching, we talk about mentorship. It's not a matter of, saying, oh, like you can't be successful if you don't hire a coach. I don't buy into that. I don't believe that at all. But what I do believe is that if you don't have the knowledge you need to go to the next stage, you are responsible to be constantly progressing, constantly developing in every single bucket, because if you don't, your business is capped in that way. And so the biggest way to be able to expand your business is to expand yourself, your knowledge, your expertise, your emotional regulation, your thought patterns, your habits. It starts with you. You are the reason that your business is not growing. Now, that's not from a place of blame and it's not a place from shame. What it actually means is that all of the power of where you want to go starts with you. You're the reason you're not growing, and you're the reason you could grow tomorrow. And so for me, you are the lid of your business was like a shot of adrenaline in me, because I realized my business is not my problem. I'm my problem. It's me. It starts with me and it ends with me. So my business will never expand outside of my level of knowledge, expertise in any bucket. Your team will never exceed your level of leadership. Your marketing will never exceed your level of knowledge. Your sales will never exceed your level of understanding of sales. It doesn't matter what bucket you put it into, you are the cap, which means you are also the thing that when you decide to operate differently and you decide to get uncomfortable and you decide to challenge the way you've always done things, you're going to see massive things change in your business. When you take full ownership that you are the lid of everything that's happening in your business right now, and that it entirely falls in 100% you, and you start to own that, you start to take decisions around that, woo! Things are going to happen in your business. I was in the blame game before I was a seven-figure earner. I was like, oh, the algorithm this and the offers this and the DMs this and whatever. I'm still aware that the market changes. I'm still aware that things happen in the business. But hey, guess what? What the heck am I going to do about it? I got to figure out a way. I got to find a way to solve that problem. I got to find a way to understand and learn XYZ skill. I got to find a way to level up my mindset to be able to handle the next level of pressure of what's going on in this business. That starts and ends with me. And it also starts and ends with you. Okay. Now, this goes to the next piece. We talked a little bit about regulation. Another principle that I really live by is that I always make data-based decisions. And this was something that I was recently talking about on social media because, in my opinion, with emotional-based decision making, and I want to clarify this because I don't want to say that you should never make a decision from an emotional awareness. My rule around making decisions from emotional awareness, so what I mean by that is you're having resistance, you're having feelings around something, you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do about this? My thing around that is you should only make decisions around something if the emotions you're experiencing are not at a heightened state. So here's what I mean by that. If you are experiencing like, I feel uneasy about this, I don't want to do this, it feels like this is not for me, this feels like it's not right, like I just feel like this is not the right path, that's okay and that's valid. But I want you to make decisions off of emotion when the emotions are not activated and they're neutral. What I mean by that is you're at the nail salon, you're getting your nails done or something. And you're just like, man, that thing I want to change, like it's really bothering me. I feel like I need to change that. Or when you're like just sitting in bed at night and you're like, oh man, I need to really change. I feel like my brand is just not elevated to the way that I feel like I want to show up. Like if you're just sitting and you're neutral and you're not in a heightened state and you're feeling like emotionally like, oh, it's just kind of ruminating in me, you can make decisions on that. That's fair. That means that when you're in a neutral, non-activated state that you're feeling and you're having awarenesses, we want to understand what those are and act on those. Here's what I do not act on. Activated emotion, meaning you're in the midst of a crisis, meltdown, or panic stage, and you want to make a change. I literally will tell my clients to their face, no. They're like, yeah, but this is this. I'm like, no, this is not the moment that we make decisions. Why? Because you're emotionally dysregulated right now. You're at a complete panic stage. This is happening, so I want to make this change. This is happening, so I want to make this change. I said, if you feel this way in a week and you feel like you again have neutralized and you're not at this place of a heightened emotional state, we can 100% talk about it at that point. And I'm glad that I have this awareness from you, but you're not acting on this right now. Because the amount of people that I've seen act in those moments because they're acting on emotion and they've actually ended up doing more damage to their business than good is more frequent than not. And so for me, my belief is your business should really be rooted as much as it can on data, which means that, yes, we're going to have emotional awarenesses that help us to make decisions, but a lot of the understanding of what's going on in your business is in your data. Like the amount of people who are like, I don't know what's going on with my sales. And then I go into their data and they're like, oh. And I'm like, yeah. Or like, I feel like nobody's buying. And I'm like, well, no one is buying because there's nobody even interested in buying. Look at these stats. Or like, hey, I feel like I'm releasing this offer, but I feel like nobody's interested. And I'm like, well, the data would tell us based off the lead magnet that we put out or the freebie and the market research that we did that you're in fact correct. The data tells us that no one's interested in solving this problem. So the thing that it does is when we look at data, it takes the emotion out of decisions, right? It really helps us to realize there's information in front of us that, if anything, validates the way you're feeling. That's what I find with data. Data for me, when I'm feeling an emotion around my business or something that I'm experiencing in it, is it like really helps me to realize, whoa, okay, I'm feeling X way. Come to find out, I actually have a reason to be feeling that way because the data tells me that that's actually where we're at. There's data to back up how I'm feeling. This also happens in the state of not experiencing problems, but also good things, right? So when you're experiencing great success and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I don't understand why this is happening or how this is coming to be, the data 9 times out of 10 is going to show you and tell you why. So for me, I have found that the data is really the best place to dive into when you're looking to make decisions. Decisions on maybe where to go next because you're having great success, or decisions on things that you're experiencing that are resistances or quote unquote problems in the business as well. Another belief that I have is that your business is only as impactful and only has the ability to grow and expand to the level of your reputation. And this I feel like could be its own podcast, if I'm going to be honest with you, because there's a lot of things that people do that really do diminish and reduce their reputation, in my opinion. But your business is only as big as your reputation. What I mean by that is your business is only as big as people who know you, and most importantly, what you're known for and how you make people feel. And I cannot remember off the top of my head, but the quote of people don't remember what you do, but they remember how you made them feel. And for me, it's been hard to coach some people because it's made me realize the problem isn't their business. The problem's their reputation. That's a hard pill to swallow because your reputation is not something that's a strategy. It's about what people say about you when you're not around. How do you make the people around you feel? Do you make them feel safe? Do you make them feel excited? Do you make them feel empowered? Do you make them feel shame? Do you make them feel wrong? Do you make them feel stupid? Right? And it may not be, I want to clarify, this may not be something that's intentional that you're doing, but it really doesn't matter because at the end of the day, it's about how you make people feel. And so what I see is like, for example, people will say, oh, I want to make more sales. But then what I find or what I discover in their business is the fact that the people who are buying into their offer don't feel heard, don't feel understood, don't feel supported. And then they're like, I just don't understand, why am I not seeing more sales? Well, to be honest, because the people inside your offer don't even feel supported. The people inside of there don't feel like you care. I see this also with people's marketing. They're like, I don't understand why people aren't moving. And I'm like, well, you're making it about you. The reputation that you have is not something that, makes people feel great around you. And so like my whole thing is like, how do I make people who consume me and who are in my world and who experience me in any facet of any way, whether you're listening to this podcast right now, whether you're in one of my programs, whether you're a current client of mine, whether you want to be a client of mine, I want you to feel like Kate makes me feel like I'm empowered, I'm educated, I'm honestly excited, and I feel confident to just go crush in my business. That's what I want you to feel. And if I ever make anyone feel any other way, I'm the first to take massive radical ownership for that. Your business is going to be greatly determined by how people feel about you and your company. Why do we have customer service departments? Why do we have money back guarantees? Why do we have these things? Because we know that there's one thing to be said for happy customers, but who's the loudest of them all? Unhappy customers, unhappy audience members, unhappy people who are consuming us. And so what happens is it spreads like wildfire. And so people then ask themselves, well, I just don't understand. Like my business doesn't seem to be growing. Yeah, because your reputation is known as blank. And it is one of the hardest things. I will tell you, I've seen it with companies that have decided to do their business a different way. It's one of the hardest things to get back. So one of the best things you can do is to, from the beginning, decide who am I? What are my values? And what do I believe to be true? And for example, one of the mottos we have in our business is recovery with flair. And what it means is if anyone for any reason came to me and they were not happy about something in any way, something I said on social media, something that, maybe I did in a coaching call, whatever it might be. If I ever have a situation where someone for any reason, for any matter is not happy, the first thing I want to do is seek to understand, which is another value of ours, seek to understand. And with that, realizing recovery with flair means that I'm not only going to fix it, but I'm going to over fix it. I'm going to make sure that me and you end up best friends by the end of this process because I don't want anyone out there in the world not feeling like they feel good about our dynamic. And so I will always do everything within my power to try to make sure that my reputation is known as someone who makes things right and who serves people and who empowers them and who activates them. And so your business will never exceed your reputation. If your reputation is not known as something that is positive and uplifting for the people around you, your business will never push through that. It will be something that keeps your business stuck because your reputation is good. Your revenue will also match the level of your reputation. Another belief is getting curious. For me, when I see things happen, I have this like deep sense of curiosity. And we talked about this in, one of our sales episodes of getting curious about people's problems. But I also get curious about, why is something happening? I feel like a little investigator. I'm like literally like a person who has access to these little pieces of information. And I'm like, I want to dive deeper into that. I want to find that. I want to figure out why is that not working? And, why is that working? I really seek to get curious. I want to get curious on why people feel the way they do. Why are people getting results? Why are people, struggling to generate revenue? Why are people feeling XYZ with their marketing right now? Like, I really want to get curious. And this is something I'll break the fourth wall here for you. I'm curious what episodes resonate with you. That's why I ask you so much to reach out and to connect with me on social because I want to know, like, I'm genuinely curious. How can I help you? Like, I'm curious about what parts about my offerings do people love or like what could they add more of? So like I do interviews with people and I say, hey, if there's anything that we could do more of inside our programs, what would it be? I'm curious. I'm curious to a fault of why things are happening. But that curious allows me and also, helps me to connect to things that ultimately change how my business is run. So because I'm getting curious, it creates opportunities for me to have insight and awareness on things that I didn't previously have. And so for yourself, I would say, things that you feel are happening or not happening in your business, how could we flex the muscle of getting more curious about those things to allow us to really uncover what we need to know and really uncover more information that could be helpful for us to scale. Another belief, and this is also kind of connected to a book, so I'm going to also shout out a book here as well. The next one is that you need to give what you want to get. And there's a book called The Go Giver that I highly, highly recommend you read. So the book is called The Go Giver. And this book really changed my perspective around giving because, from the beginning of my business, I've really been someone who deeply wanted to serve. And that was sometimes through, free coaching on a live. It might be, giving people scholarships. We've done all kinds of things when it comes to giving in our business. And I've often found that the times that I've received the most have been on the back of me giving the most. And I really do think a lot of my business has been built off the fact of service being the core value and the core thing that I hold to be true. So I'll give you an example of something that happened most recently. So I recently held a program or an offer that was a one-time thing we did, and it was called Scale Sessions. And this was something that was $200. It was not $197. And when we ran it, it was a hot seat Q&A type style for a month with me. And so the calls themselves were every single Monday for 90 minutes or sorry, 2 hours. Some of them ended up being 3 hours. On top of that, we did a recording that was another recording we sent out to people that sometimes in itself ended up being 90 minutes. And I had somebody ask me, they said, Kate, why would you offer something like that for $200? And I said, well, do you really want to know? Because when I do that and someone invests $197 with me, number one, I'm going in with anything that I create to serve your face off. Like I really want you to be deeply, deeply served in whatever it is that I do. But the thing that I really realize is the fact that I give so much because I've always found the more I give, the more I receive. And so it was interesting because when we ran our scale sessions, after that, our Black Friday started. And the amount of people who were in that session of scale sessions who then inquired for Black Friday, and they were like, to be honest, seeing the way you coach for $197, yeah, sign me up for 15K, right? Like they know and they see the aspect of value and how much I serve. And so like if you serve that way at $200, imagine how you serve at 15, 20, 30, 60, $100,000. So when I say give what you want to get, I think there's also a belief, which was something I talked about at a recent event. I spoke at an event recently about marketing. And one of the questions that had come up was someone said, well, I'm a little bit worried about giving all of this away because if I give all these things away, then who's going to want to hire me? And it's such a common question. And it's something that, we hear obviously a lot. But the idea that someone's hiring you just for what you put, like if you put it on social media, they're not going to hire you. That's not the reason people are hiring you, especially in today's day and age. Like when I have given the most on social has actually when I've scaled my business the most. And so the way I look at this is the reason people are hiring me is not for what I know, but how I help them to execute it. It's not a matter of what I know and the fact that just I know I can't tell someone I know this information. Guess what? Most of the information that you know is on the internet. Most of what the information that you're teaching could in some way, shape, or form be distilled down from somewhere on the internet. That's not why people are hiring you. They're hiring you because the accountability. They're hiring you because of the connection. They're hiring you because you're doing it for them. They hire you to save time, to save money, to save mental energy and stress. There's a million and one ways that can show up and it can present itself. The thing that I would say is that people are not hiring you for what you know, but most importantly for how you do it. Right? And for also the aspect of customization of it, right? Like if I'm somebody who is wanting to get fit, I can do that by downloading a workout program on the internet. Like I don't necessarily have to hire a coach if I want to make changes with my health. But why do I hire a coach? Because they can help me with my mindset. They can help me with my accountability. They can help me with, hey, this exercise is hurting. What do I do about it? That's why they're hiring me. Not just because I know how to build a workout or not just because I know how to, create a program. They're doing that and they're working with that person because that person embodies the depth of what they're teaching. What you teach and what you know is not why people are hiring you. And if anything, what I believe and has always been my perspective is that what you teach on social will allow someone to have a micro transformation. So for example, you might have even felt, which is always something that I hope for you, but I always hope that when someone listens to one of these episodes that you're able to take some aspect of clarity. Maybe, I connected with somebody actually in the DMs and you know who you are. So thank you for listening. I had connected with her and she said, your belief around if it's a pattern, it's a problem, changed my life. And I said, what kind of came up for you? And she said, I realized I was in a relationship and there was a lot of patterns that I was not okay with. And I realized that, while it obviously, if it's a pattern, it's a problem, was not my intention around relationships when I talked about it. this person had come to me and said, your if it's a pattern, it's a problem, made me realize that I had so many patterns that had persisted in my relationship and that I was not okay with them. And when I acknowledged them and addressed them, I realized that I didn't want to be in this dynamic anymore. And so I realized that I was also part of the pattern. Had a pattern of dating XYZ men. I had a pattern of, being this way in relationships. And so because of that, I've decided to leave my partner. And, it makes me emotional thinking about it because when I share and I think about this podcast as like my open business diary, if I'm going to be honest with you, I'm just like, hey, I want to give you as much as I possibly can. And there's no strings attached to it. I don't expect you to invest with me. I don't expect you to do anything. All I ask you to do is to really take this information and integrate it for yourself so you can win in whatever way that looks for you. And so when we talk about give what you want to get, because I gave in that podcast this one line, that changed the ability for her to go home and to be able to have a totally different life. And so when I say give what you want to get, what I want to get is impact. What I want to get is people being changed. What I want to get is women, being empowered and being able to have the life and the business that is 100% possible for them. And that happens through the more that I give. And so this also came up as a conversation at an event around your frameworks, right? Because people are like, well, what if I teach this and someone takes it and rips it off? There's a couple pieces to that, okay? So when I teach some of my frameworks, my belief is if I teach you a framework on this podcast and you take that and you run with it and you get exceptional results, guess what? You didn't need to hire me in the first place. It meant that the information was effective in itself alone, that you really didn't need me. You didn't need me. So it would have been unethical for me to even sign you as a client because you didn't even need me in the first place. So there's that piece. But then people say, well, what if someone steals it? What if someone, rips it off? And I said, great. What's the goal in your business? Your goal in your business is impact. And so again, if that person is helping and teaching it to more people, then frankly, you're getting the impact that you always wanted. Right? Like, I don't believe in this idea that my information is my value. And I think it's that belief that has allowed our business to be able to expand. I literally know of past clients that have taught my frameworks, that have shared my insights or shared my information. And that's because I don't believe that what I teach is the thing that makes me valuable. And it's interesting because I've actually had people who said, hey, I worked with so-and-so and I was in their program and I realized this is your framework. Like, can I learn this from you? Like they come back to the source. They come back to the place to be like, hey, I want to dive deeper into this and I want to learn more. So give what you want to get. Another belief that I have is when opportunity knocks at your door, lean in. And oftentimes it's going to knock when you're not ready. So I'm going to tell you a quick story. I actually, a year ago, I was going to New York and I was going to go be there to meet with someone for a VIP day. And I was like, okay, well, if I'm already going to be in New York, why don't I just see if any of my followers live in New York and want to, connect for dinner? So I said, hey, going to be going to New York. If anybody wants to meet in New York for dinner, shoot me a DM. And so I had an onslaught of people who were like, I want to meet you for dinner. Let's do it. And when I opened this opportunity for dinner, on one hand, I was so excited because I'm like, great, this is so cool. I get to meet with so many women. And then on the other hand, I was like, this is like 20 something people. So I was like, I gotta get a reservation here. So I go to get a reservation set up and they're like, hey, this is actually going to fall into it being a small party. So like, you're going to have a private reservation in a private room. And I was like, oh, okay. So then I was like, well, what does that mean? They're like, well, you have a spending minimum and all of these things. And I was like, oh, so this is not just like girlfriends going for dinner anymore. This is really something bigger. And so in that moment, I had to decide like, okay, like I can either say, oh, so sorry guys, like, we can only do 3 or 4 people because, anything bigger than like 8 people is considered a private. Like I could have made up all the reasons why I wasn't going to do this. But then also I could look at the opportunity of like, well, if I did do this and if I did lean in, what would that do for me and what opportunity might present itself? So that's what I did is I basically saw that there was this demand, there was this interest to meet for dinner, there was this interest to have like-minded entrepreneurs come together. And so because of that, I was like, great, let's lean into that. And so we created ambitious, the first ambitious dinner and the first of its series of events that started, the starting of dinner series. We are hoping to do another thing coming up in the new year. And so all of this to say, we really just saw an opportunity in front of us and we're like, hey, like we're not ready, but we'll get ready. And so it really helped me to realize that, like, so many times in my business, there's going to be times where I am not ready for something. And I have a decision in that moment where I get to decide, if I'm someone who wants to be a high earner in a big business and all of these things, I have to decide that I'm going to operate differently. I have to decide that when this comes, I'm going to get ready and position myself to be ready in such a way that I can take action on this. And this has even happened, to be honest, when I had my first speaking opportunity. I remember I had my first opportunity to speak and I was like, my body said no. My body was like, I am not a speaker. I am not somebody who wants to do this. No, no, no. Like, what am I going to speak on? I don't even know how to speak on stage. Like, I don't know the right things to do. And I felt so nervous. And then I was like, okay, like 3, 2, 1, go. And I was like, yeah, of course I'll speak on your stage. Absolutely. And then that started me doing speaking. And that was kind of what, kind of transpired in me going on to other stages and going to other events and speaking. And so it's been something that I will say has been this motto of mine, is like, when opportunity knocks, answer the door. And a lot, again, kind of going back to that perfectionism piece, a lot of us have the belief that because we haven't done it before, we don't have anything prepared, I don't have anything ready. I'm like, great, get ready then. So with the dinner, back to our example, we saw that there was all this intrigue and interest. And I was like, great, I'm going to have to figure it out. So what I did is I had already sold, I think it was at that point like 18 tickets to come to this dinner. I didn't have a venue booked. I didn't have an understanding of what the menu was. I had nothing. I just had sales for tickets of people who were coming and people being like, hey, booked my flight. Can't wait to see you. And I'm like, okay, here we go. Right. Like I didn't have anything ready, but I got ready. And it ended up being an amazing dinner. And we had videographers and photographers and, goodie bags. And we, had like cue cards for the tables for connection and deeper questions to better know one another. And, we ended up going for a post dinner and we did a brunch the next morning. Like, it became a thing of its own, but it started with, I don't have a plan for this. I'm not ready. And I think that that's a belief that 7-figure earners embody. Like, they don't need to always be ready, but when opportunity knocks, they recognize that sometimes this opportunity is not going to present itself again. Sometimes you're going to have moments where the opportunity is right in front of you and you don't have anything ready, but you got to get ready. And there's also the side of people, though, that I do find who don't scale are the people who say, like, oh, I don't have this and I don't have that. They find all the reasons it can't work. And I'm like, let's just think in opportunity. Let's think in the ability for this to really expand and develop. What if it did work? What if we could make it happen? What if it could be something that allowed us to get here, there, or wherever? And so I always think when opportunity knocks, lean in, get ready. If you're not ready, get ready. This one is another one, is that rest is not a waste of time. And pausing and stillness and slowing down does not mean that you're slowing down your progress and scaling. And this is something that a lot of my high earners know. This was something I had, even for myself, a difficult relationship with because, I used to think, well, like, if I'm really wanting to have a goal happen, the last thing I want to do is relax right now. I need to go, go, go. I got to work, work, work. But the thing that I will say is that oftentimes when you're resting or when you're calm or when you're serene or when you're still is actually when you have the most clarity in your business. So when someone feels like they're super, super busy and they have a lot of things going on, they're like, I'm going to cut back on sleep a little bit. I'm going to not take that day off. I'm going to cancel date night because I got too much going on. It's actually the total opposite. The more that you rest, the more opportunities you have for clarity. Because when you're in the storm, you can't see. You need to be able to remove yourself from the chaos, remove yourself from the storm to get an aspect of clarity to know what to do next. And so I think there's a big, to be honest, missed opportunity that people have when they basically go in and say, okay, well, I'm just going to push through. I'm just going to go, 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 go. Resting is probably one of the most effective things that you can do when you're in the busiest seasons of your business and frankly of your life, right? Like, I've seen people in the midst of a launch and they're like, yeah, like I'm going to work all weekend. I'm like, I actually would really recommend not doing that. If you want to do a half day on Saturday, great, but put a cap and a container on it. And then you need to recharge because guess what? On Monday, I need you to come back and I need you to kick ass. And you're not going to be able to do that if the entire weekend you were also working, 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 working. At some point, you got to plug in your phone and let it recharge. Same thing for yourself. You got to pour into yourself if you want to pour into your business. And so people often fight me on this one because they believe that there's so much going on in their business. Now is not the time to rest. Now is not the time that I should be pulling back. If anything, it's the perfect time. It's the perfect time to plan rest. Like I had a client message me recently and she was like, Kate, I was going for this launch and I just realized like, I really have to take the weekends off. Like I can't work the weekends to do this. And I feel like I'm failing and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, this is actually the biggest win ever. This is the biggest win ever. You're protecting your peace in what is considered to be the hardest push season of your business. This is a massive win. It's a massive win because 7-figure entrepreneurs understand that yes, just like all businesses, there's going to be seasons and situations where you have to compromise, but there's also in 7-figure earners' lives and the way that they structure and schedule their time, they understand that they have to protect themselves. They have to protect their energy, their battery, their perspective, their mindset if they're going to win at all, because they really don't look at it as this weekend or this week or this month. They look at the way that they operate as a practice and an ongoing routine of how they approach their life and their business, which is ultimately the reason that their process, the way that they look at things and do things is different. And so rest is not a matter of it being a waste of time, but more use rest as a resource to help you scale. Use rest as an intentional place to really help to catapult you to the next level. I will be honest, this season in my life is the biggest my business has been. And I have never slept this much. I've never rested this much. I've never been able to go and connect with friends this much. I've seen entrepreneurs that I work with lean more into rest and double their revenue because they're actually coming to their business and coming to solving problems with an entirely different level of awareness, understanding, clarity, perspective, work efforts that they're able to put into it because they're rested. So I used to I will tell you, I fully said to a mentor, I was like, I see sleep as an inconvenience. It was an inconvenience to me because I was like, go, 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 go. And they never let me hear the end of it. But when I had talked about, sleep is inconvenience, it's because I always felt like I was behind. I always felt like I could use that time to do X, Y, and Z. When you pour into yourself, into your habits, your health, your routines, your filling of your cup, you're going to see insane things happen in your business. Another thing that I want to make sure I share with you is that there are seasons in business. Okay. So entrepreneurs that are 7-figure and multiple 7-figure earners, they recognize that there are seasons in business. So by seasons in business, I mean that there's going to be winters. Okay. There's going to be times where it is not a fun type situation. You might find that you're struggling for leads. You might find that your marketing is feeling more resistant than ever. You might find that you have team members that are leaving, clients that you're having issues with. You may have times where there are really, really, really tough experiences in business. You may also have times that are not like winter. Instead, they're like summer. You feel like sales are flowing in. Marketing's never been easier. My schedule has never been more flow. And you're like, everything is just working in alignment for me. That's a summer in your business. Here's what I want to make sure you know. Seasons change. When you are in summer, winter will come. Also remember, when you are in a winter of your business, summer is coming. The thing that a lot of entrepreneurs don't acknowledge is that whatever they're in is not going to last forever. If it's going really well, it will get hard. So don't bank on it being like this forever. The amount of entrepreneurs I see get comfortable. They're like, oh, this is happening. This is happening. It's always going to be that way. There's always going to be a problem on the horizon. So the idea of like, oh, like your business is really, really easy right now. Guess what? Your platform you're marketing on, that's the top platform you're creating on right now, gets deleted. Summer's over overnight, right? So the thing that we have to keep in mind is that when you're crushing it and it's so flow and easy, you can't take your eye off of the fact that it may not be like this forever. You may not have this flow. And I've seen this time and time again. People get genuinely upset with their business when the summer of their business doesn't last forever and they're starting to see the colder months come in and winter's on its way. And they go, what the heck? Summer felt like this. I said, yeah, great. It's not summer anymore. And that's because seasons change in your business. Now, how long those seasons are is business to business. Some people have had a summer for 3 years. Some people have summers for 3 months. But it's important to recognize that your season will change. If you're having a summer, winter is coming. And also, if you're in a really hard season right now, remember it's not going to stay this way forever. It's not always going to have to be hard. It's not always going to have to be something you struggle with. It's not always going to have to be something that you feel like you experience resistance with. Like, you will at some point see a change and see a shift where things start to feel more in flow and more in line than ever. That is going to happen. That is on the horizon for you. You have to remember that summer at some point is coming. Now, here's where seasons are also impactful. Seasons of business are also impactful because every business has seasons that are actually like timed to their specific year of business. What I mean by this is businesses that are in business for a couple years or more oftentimes will see trends of what their winter is. So like some of my clients, their winter, their tough month is December. For some people, their winter or their tough month is July, right? Like, for example, the summer for some businesses, say I'm a fitness coach. Well, guess what? January 1 as a fitness coach, this is your prime time. This is your moment to lean in. This is your moment to be able to push, and be able to realize it's the whole new year, new me. A lot of people are desiring to dive into their fitness goals in January, and that's something that you can lean into as a fitness coach. So when you have and understand that there's seasons in business, what you're also going to understand by knowing and having that perspective as a business owner is that you understand the seasons will change, and you understand that there also typically are trends of seasons for you. And I kind of think about this like people who live in different parts of the world, they have different seasons in different months, right? Like the winter in Australia is very different timed in the sense of when they experience all the things than when they might experience it, for example, here in Toronto. It's just different. And so we really want to remember that business to business, when your hard season will change, but every business does in fact have seasons. Okay. Another belief that I have is that it's never personal, it's always business. And this is something that has been a motto of mine, to handle situations and not take them as an attack on me, but realizing that it really is something that's just a disconnect in the business. So let's just say a team member decides that they're going to move on, and they're like, well, I can't believe they're leaving me. Like, I can't believe they're leaving me. And I've done this and I've done that. And I was like, it's business. Your team members leave. That's just what happens. Like, it's part of the process of business. They're not leaving you. They're leaving their position. They've decided that this position isn't what they want, and they might decide that they've decided to, be a stay-at-home mom, and they've decided that they don't want to be working as much as they once did. It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with, the role wasn't good enough and the income wasn't good enough and I did this for them. None of that is why they are there or not there. All that's happening is that they've just decided to do something else, and it's not personal. Has nothing to do with you. This is just a reality of business. The same thing when it comes to, for example, someone who says to me, this client worked with me for 2 years and now they're not renewing. And I'm like, you have to realize that's not personal. They're not saying, like you're a bad coach or you're a bad service or I don't, whatever the thought might be. They've decided in their business that they have a different problem they're experiencing. They have a different reality that they're experiencing. And so because of that, they've decided they want to go a different direction. It has nothing to do with you. It's their own journey. That's just business. People have investments that they make, and then they look at their cash flow or they look at where they're going and their vision of their business, and they decide to invest somewhere else. That's normal. That's part of business. So I think what ends up happening in business is a lot of the times, especially when we are personal brands, most importantly, when we're personal brands, we feel this more than ever. But in general, all businesses experience this. When you're a personal brand, it's very difficult because you are the face. When your marketing doesn't do well, you're like, people hate me. They don't like me. No, they don't like what you said in your marketing. They don't like your message. Right. And so like, it just means whatever you said didn't land or didn't activate with somebody. That doesn't mean they don't like you. It just means that they didn't resonate with specifically what you were talking about. It's not that they don't like you. If someone doesn't buy as a result of a sales call, they're like, oh, they don't want to work with me. No, there's a certain promise or a certain offering that you offered to that person on the call or in the DMs or in whatever sales process, and it didn't feel like something that they wanted to take action on right now. It has nothing to do with you. The product or the promise of whatever you talked about might not be the perfect fit for them, and that's okay. One of the things that's really helped me is to realize that things that happen in my business or in, frankly, like my life, sometimes are just not personal. And I try to remove myself from it and realize like, this is not about me. This is about the process. It's not about me. This is about the outcome. It's not about me. This is about just the fact that this is common business practice. These things happen. And so, like, even for me, like, I was working with a coach for a long time. I want to say like at least 4 years. And I ended up moving on from that experience with that coach. And like, I have nothing, no bad energy against that coach. I have no bad energy. Like, there's nothing personal. It had nothing to do with them. It had to do with the fact that like I had been here for a long time and I wanted to kind of go to something else and be challenged for the next stage and figure out what that looks like for me. And so because of that, I just decided that I wanted to move on. Like, it had nothing to do with them. It just had to do with the fact that I just feel like I need something different. And I always will support them and I always will acknowledge how much they were such a big part of my journey. Like, that's always going to be there. But I just decided I want to go a different direction. So it's not personal, it's business. Another belief that, or a model or an understanding or a framework that's been really supportive for me is understanding that all successful businesses account for different levels of outcome. They don't assume that everything is either I did it or I didn't do it, or like there's not a black and white, there's always a gray. And what I mean by this, I'm going to break this down for you. So if you want to make a note, there's actually something you can look up on the internet, and it's called the bell curve. And this was something that really helped me when I was taught this in my business, because the bell curve really normalizes the fact that there are ratios of things that happen in business. And this can apply to any bucket. So I'll give you a couple examples. The bell curve shows you that there's different percentages. There's the low end, which is like a 10%, average. There's the high end, which might be a 10% average. And then you've got the middle, or the average in the middle, the median, if you will, that is, the other 80%. So the bell curve helped me and has helped a lot of my clients because they recognize and they account for the fact that failure is going to happen, knockout success is going to happen, but we really need to care about what's in the middle. And so let's just say, for example, marketing. If you have some posts in your marketing that you're like, they are just dying, they're not doing anything. You've got that. You've also got the other side, which is like, oh my God, this one went viral and it did super, super well. Both those are going to exist at all times in your marketing. You're always going to have things that you post. Even I do things that I post that I do not do well at all. And I'm like, okay. And so like, it just helps me to understand not every post is going to crush. On the other hand, we've also got, the post that we put out and we feel like this just like completely soared and just it knocks it out of the park in the sense of the way that, we posted it or whatever we did. But I want to know how 80% of our posts are doing. Like, there's always going to be the ones that suck. There's always going to be the ones that do really well. But I want to know, what are the 80% of the posts and how are those on average doing? This also applies to clients. I will talk to people who say, oh, well, like people in my program are doing really well. And I was like, what percentage would you say are crushing it? And they're like, well, like, 10% of my clients are killing it right now. And I'm like, great. And you probably have like 10% who are really struggling. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, great. I care about the 80 in the middle. And that's because both those extremes of really, really doing well and really, really struggling, those are always going to exist. And so I don't pour a lot of weight into that. I recognize I'm going to have difficulty and I'm going to have crazy, I don't even know how it happens, success. That's always going to be there, right? It's the same thing in any other situation. If you are somebody who works out every day, you're going to have the workouts where you're like, oh my God, I killed it. And you're going to have workouts where you're like, I struggled through that. I did like barely survive that workout. Those days happen. But you also know about the random Wednesday you go where you just put in the reps and it wasn't amazing and it wasn't horrible. It was just a workout. And you go about your day and you go home and you live on. The bell curve and understanding this principle and this perspective helped me to ground into not getting so bought into the extreme of wins and also not getting so pulled in to the depths of something that's not working. It helps me to focus on the median average. It helped me to look at the 80% of what's happening in my business. What's that? What does that look like? Because if I can focus on that, that's the average of what I'm going to experience. I'm going to have killing it and I'm struggling with it, but I'm always going to want to focus on what is that 80% that I could really dive into, that I can sink my teeth into. That's the thing I really want to focus on. Another thing that is a perspective of mine is to be in it for the mission. Okay. So what I mean by this is be in your business for something bigger than yourself. 7-figure earners are not connected to the money as their number one thing anymore. Because honestly, if they did, they'd be miserable in their business. They would be somebody who's massively disconnected in their business. Be in it for the mission means be in your business for something bigger than just the bank account. Be in your business for something bigger than just a certain amount of followers. People who have big businesses realize that they have to buy in and be connected to something bigger if they're going to have any success of doing this long term. And so be in it for the mission. Have something bigger than you. Like for me, we know that less than 3% of female founded businesses hit 7 figures. And like, I want to change that stat. That's not going to happen this year. It's not going to happen next year. It's not going to happen in the next 10 years, maybe, to the way I want it to happen, in the sense of not the fact that we can't change the stat, more the fact of the level of which we want to change it might not happen next year. And that means that I have a mission that I'm fueled by in my business for probably the next like 30, 40 years. It's a movement. It's a larger why. It's a deeper intention, a deeper purpose. And so I find that the people who struggle in their business are the people who are very, very fixated on just the outcome of a certain number or a metric or a goal. And for me, I'm really like, I want someone to have a deeper why. I want you to have a reason to get out of bed in the morning that has nothing to do with a bank account. I want you to have a reason to get out of bed in the morning that's got nothing with how you're posted from yesterday. Like it's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. And if you don't have a bigger why, when you face any aspect of adversity, you're going to have everything in your body say, I don't want to do this. But that's also because your perspective and your marker of success was built on achieving blank rather than realizing that this is just that achievement or that milestone was just a step toward the ultimate thing we're trying to do. Like for me, every year is just a step toward where it is that I'm going to be going in the next 10, 20 years. But like, we're not done at this milestone. We're not done at this amount of followers. We're not done at this platform. We're not done at, this many subscribers. We're never done. But these are just progress and momentum toward the big thing that we're doing. And so when you root in that, you have this expectation of a movement of change, not just a kind of check the box, we achieved blank. A big motto of mine is you don't get to complain about it if you're not going to do anything about it. And I know that this is hard to hear, and it's hard for me to hear. I tell people in my world, I told someone extremely close to me, I said, hey, this is a goal that I'm trying to work toward. This is something I'm trying to achieve. And so I need you to do me a favor. And like, yeah, what's up? I'm like, I need you every time I complain about this to say, hey, don't complain about it if you're not going to do something about it. The amount of people that I see who complain about their sales but don't sell is mind-boggling. And you know who you are. If you were trying to be like, oh, I want to make more sales. Great. How much did you sell this week? You know the answer to that. If you want to be fit and you want to have the best strength or the best endurance, guess what? What was the last time you went to the gym? If you want to have the best relationship and be super connected to your partner and you want to have the best dynamic between the two, when was the last time that you actually connected and decided to go out, put your phone away, and actually prioritize each other in your communication? And not say, oh, we're going to watch TV as our way of connecting. Right? Like we need to have a hard conversation with ourselves, which is if we're going to say we want something, then we have to go do. We have to go do it. And so my rule with entrepreneurs that I work with is you don't get to complain about it if you're not doing anything to fix it, because it means the absence of action was your decision. You, by not doing anything, are actively choosing to stay the same. So do not complain to me when you end up being like, I just don't understand why I'm not making change. I do. And you do. You know exactly why you're staying the same. You know exactly why you're not seeing movement in XYZ goal. It's not a surprise. You and I both know. And honestly, my thing as a coach is I oftentimes don't need to tell you. If someone says to me, I want to make more sales, one of the first questions I ask is, so have you been selling? And they're like, I know. And I'm like, what do I always say? You don't get to complain about it because you're deciding for it to happen. You don't get to complain about it if you're not going to do something about it. And I even ask my peers, my people around me to help me to integrate this belief and this perspective, because I recognize how powerful it is for us to have people who call us on our stuff, who challenge us and help us to realize that we are someone who keeps saying and saying and saying. It's not about what you say. It's a matter of what you do. And so if you're saying you want a bigger business, start acting like it. If you say you want to have more sales, start acting like it. If you say you want to have a better body or a different strength or mindset, start acting like it. If you say you don't want to be burnt out anymore and feel constantly stressed about money, start acting like it. That's a hard one. This is one of the harder ones. It's not a softer skill, but it's probably one of the most impactful. Because when we have to actually realize that we don't get to ruminate in the story, because that's really what's happening. When you allow yourself to whine about things and you have other people around you who will let you to whine, they're not challenging you to your highest potential. They're not challenging you to your highest good. So you just circle on like, oh, poor me, this thing happening, and ruminating and ruminating and ruminating on the problem. And I am the first to challenge myself to bring people in my environment that say, hey, you've talked to me for the last X amount of days or weeks about this, and I've held space for you, but now you got to stop whining about it unless you're going to do something about it. So, another belief, you may sometimes need to kill who you were to become what you want to be. And this was one that I had to do. I had a call with one of my mentors, and we had talked about I remember I was like, I think probably multiple six figures in business at that point. And we had talked about, growing the business and kind of going to the next stage. And I was like, yeah, I just don't know. Like, I don't know these things, right? Like, I was just like a server who got lucky. And he was like, whoa, 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 whoa. What did you just say? And I was like, yeah, like, I don't know how to do these things. He's like, no, the other part. And I'm like, well, like, I'm just like a server who got lucky. And he's like, that's your problem. I'm like, okay. And he's like, your problem is you still see yourself as a server who got lucky. You don't see yourself as an entrepreneur and a business owner. So it makes sense that your business is not growing because you don't even see yourself as an entrepreneur. You see yourself still in the last job or profession that you have, even though you've been in business for 2+ years now. And I was like, mm-hmm. And I just realized that, like, if I'm going to be something, I have to kill the way I once did things. If they're not serving me, not just doing that to not just kill it off to kill it off, but kill it if it's not serving me. Like, I had people that I was around who were not people that were going to help me grow. I had to let relationships go because they were not things helping me to go where I wanted to go in life. I had to kill off ways and habits that I had of watching Netflix and binging Netflix as a way of numbing my brain, and realize that I could pour into myself and make myself feel better than just numbing if I wanted to get to the next level of my business. I had certain ways that I was doing things and certain perspectives that I had and certain habits that I had that if I didn't change those were the things that were the weights around my ankle that were causing my business to not scale. It was really, at the end of the day, I had to let go to create space for what was supposed to be as the next thing. And a lot of the time, people carry so much of perspectives, habits, beliefs, patterns of behavior, people in their environment, decisions they've made, whatever it might be, and they hold so much of that it really keeps them weighted down. And I felt so much resistance initially to letting go of that, because if I let go of the old identity of who I was, it meant that I had to fully embody who I was going to be. And that was scary. That was scary, scary, scary. Because it meant that I didn't know who that person was, right? Like, I didn't know her as well. I knew who I'd been. I knew I'd been a server. I knew I'd spent this way. I knew I had these kinds of people around me. I knew I had these conversations around me. Like, this is who I was. This is how I was, brought up. This is the reality that I had had until now. Like, I know this. This is comfy for me. But that was also the sign that I needed to leave that, because it's where I was comfortable, not where I was going to create the reality that I want. And the hard part is doing that. There's a lot of guilt around that. There's a lot of shame about outgrowing certain conversations or people or friends or jobs or whatever it might be. We feel weird about it because we're like, but that's what I've always done. But just because you've always done it doesn't mean you need to continue to do it. Just because you could stay that way doesn't mean you should stay that way. And that the choice is yours, whether you decide to keep that or kill that. So is Kate the server part of my journey? 100%. I wouldn't even be here if I wasn't a server who saw an event, who went to the event, and who committed to a program and dove into this. Like, I wouldn't be where I am today. Like that, I had to have those phases. Those chapters are part of my book. But the thing to remember is that there are chapters after that. The chapters didn't stop at Kate as a server. So we can't keep focusing on chapter 2 when right now we're in the process of writing chapter 20. Okay? The last one I'm going to leave you with is how you feel in your business is not who you are. And this was something that I will say, like, I feel like I constantly still have as a practice right now because I think there's times where sometimes we feel things or we're doing things and we're like, that's who I am. So like I even talked to an entrepreneur yesterday and she was like, like I'm not a planner, and I'm like, I'm not somebody who's like very type A, and I'm not structured, and I'm not this. And I was like, whoa. Can we chill on the labels? Think how many labels you just listen to your voice note back and look and count how many labels you just gave yourself. I'm not creative. I'm not good with numbers. I'm not good with this. I can't do this. I'm not like that. I'm not wired that way. I don't do blank. And what ends up happening is when we put ourselves in these boxes, we basically then end up filtering our external environment to only feed us what we want to see. And so I'll share one of mine. One of the things I realized was I am somebody who is pretty typically in the trends of how they operate, very masculine energy. And what I'm like, my peers and everybody always jokes about it, like you're like just such a bro in the way that you love marketing and strategy and structure and all these things. And what I've recognized is that that's something I love, but it's not who I am. And so because I was so strict on stepping into the masculine, and by the way, if you're like masculine, feminine, what the heck are you talking about? We had an epic episode, and I mean an epic episode with George Bryant going over the different sides of masculine, feminine. Highly recommend listening to that if you haven't, or watching that. But when I started to realize I'm very in my masculine, it became like an identity for me that allowed me to hide in it, that didn't cause me to have to tap into the feminine. And it meant that I was like, oh, but I tell people, I let people know that like, this is what I do and this is what I do. And I was constantly putting out these labels of who I was because it kept me from having to actually embody the other side. And so I realized that this was like a self-placed label that I was putting on myself to further box myself in a certain area. And so even when I see people who are like, oh, I'm not good with numbers or I'm not good with strategy, a great quote in another episode by TJ, he had talked about these questions was, when did you decide that? When did you decide that you're not good with numbers? When did you decide that you're somebody who's not good with strategy? When did you decide that you're not consistent? When did you decide that business is hard for you? When did you decide anything? So I really am somebody, when I think about being, a 7-figure earner, it's about looking at how I feel doesn't mean I am that, or how I experience something doesn't mean I am that. And I try to be very conscious. And it's still, as I said, a work in practice for me, but I try to be really conscious about adding labels because I recognize when I add labels to myself, it means I'm further digging the hole of me staying in whatever it is I'm labeling. So if I say I'm a perfectionist, it further means that I am basically stating that to be who I am, which means that it's going to further make me embody that belief. It's going to further make me embody that to be true. And so I want to make sure I don't go on a 3-hour tangent here for you. We may need to do a part 2 to this one day. But these are some of the beliefs and the mottos that I myself have found to be a massive catalyst in my growth, and are also things that I teach my clients and that I help them to embody, because we realize that being a more successful business owner than you're going to be today, there's strategy pieces to it, for sure, for sure. There's no question. There's always going to be refinements to the strategy of how you do things. How I do business today is very different than how I did business in my first year of business. But the thing that I will say is there's a lot more about who you are right now that is actually the cap. Going back to, again, you being the lid of your business, who you are right now is also much more a cap around your business than maybe potentially anything else is. And so I really want to use this as an invitation for you to go through some of these principles we discussed, to go through some of these perspectives and say, where can I be better? Where can I, not label myself? Where can I tune more into my mission? Where can I maybe let go of pieces that I'm still hanging on to that are causing me to be here? Where can I get more curious? Where can I maybe put more intentional rest? How can I embody more selling and embodying more serving in my day-to-day? How can I change my relationship with problems maybe? What can I do to kind of lean into my business and better understand the seasons I'm experiencing? What are things I might be taking personally right now that I really just need to recognize are part of business? What are opportunities maybe that have come my way that I have not taken in the belief that I wasn't ready? How am I making decisions in some aspects that are not rooted in data and all rooted in emotion? And what would I say my reputation is in my business or of the people that have worked with me? Right? Ask yourself some of those questions. And again, are these all of them? No. As I said, it would probably be a 3-hour show at least. But this is to get the pages rolling. And I want to, say like I hit 7 figures in the first 18 months of business. And the reason I share that is really it has nothing to do with me, but more a matter of it being a testament to the fact of how much you can choose to grow if you make that choice. If you choose that you're going to expand and you choose that you're going to grow your business and you choose you're going to rapidly scale and you're choosing that you're going to hit 7 figures or multiple 7 figures or whatever it might be, that choice, when you fully embody that and decide that to be true, and you take some of these principles and start to put them into practice and really start to work on them, you'll see things change in your life and you're going to see things change in your business. And so like this process, I want to note as well, it doesn't have to happen over like 3 to 5 years. This could mean in the next 12 months by you really deciding that this is who you're going to be, that you see a totally different reality. And I would hazard to guess that would be the case. But it really comes with number one, acknowledging it, but then also two, putting it into practice to say, how can we embody this as much as possible to let the results that are connected to this start to happen? So remembering that if you want to become a 7-figure business, you got to start acting like one now. You don't wait until you hit 7 figures to start embodying what it means to be a 7-figure business owner. 7 figures happens inside of you much quicker than it's going to happen in your bank account. It starts with you. 7 figures happens inside of you before it ever happens in your bank account. So I hope today was something that gave you some light bulbs. I would love to know if there's anything that really resonated with you, anything that you're like, woo, that was the line that I needed. I'm going to take that and roll with it. And as always, I want to say a massive, massive thank you. I love to end these shows with some massive gratitude for you. I appreciate you. And I hope that everything that you have had and listened today maybe kind of allowed some pieces to land or some pieces to shift for you. And so I cannot wait to see how this changes the outcome in your business, how this changes the outcomes in your life, because I know for a fact it has massively changed mine. So all of that to say, my friends, thank you so, so much for listening or watching, and we will see you next week. And as always, stay ambitious.